Hi, everyone. Welcome back to your Daily DM. This is episode number 11. Today, we're going to talk about money. Very important topic. We always think our topics are important, but we believe this one for sure is. We're going to cover a few things. We're going to talk through financial independence. We'll talk about our experiences, weigh out the differences between being rich versus wealthy. And then finally, we'll wrap it up with the value of financial control. So thanks for joining us on this episode. Mahwish, how are you feeling about it?
It's a very important topic just because it's sometimes is an uncomfortable discussion to have. Money can have stronger impact in your life or can break relationships, affect your lifestyle, affect a lot around you. So I think it's extremely important topic and sometimes it's overlooked in my mind. I don't know what your thoughts are.
I think it certainly was a taboo topic for a long time, and I feel like that's changing, which is good. I think with every generation, we get new flavors of culture, and one of them is that this is not, it's changing to be less taboo. Although I think that there's still a point where people kind of cut off the information. I'm not going to give you any of my
Yeah.
actual numbers or anything like that, but at least talking about the basics and the fundamentals, I think that that's changing a little bit, and it is exciting because it is an important topic.
Yeah, because I grew up with just information that as long as you go to college and you get a degree and then you have a good job, you're set. But times are changing. It's not just about education and a job, but you need to have other assets, other avenues of income. And with everything that's going on, this is extremely important topic because you never know with the uncertainty around us how valuable it is for you to understand money, how it works, how you gain wealth, etc. So let's move forward.
So, financial independence, what is it?
Financial independence to me means I can not worry about just the fundamentals, which is paying my lifestyle on a consistent basic, the essential needs, the cost of living. But financial independence also means long term, I don't have to work and somehow my money is growing through investments. When I get to that state, I believe I'm going to be completely financially independent where I don't have to work. I can volunteer, I can donate, whatever I want to do with it, spend time however I want without having to worry about where am I going to get the money to pay for my lifestyle. But on top of that, I have some money left over for investments too. That to me is financially independent.
I think it's the moment you don't really need your job anymore. Whatever
Right.
you've got in terms of investments, some people like to do real estate. I don't like that idea for me, but whatever the case is, some stream of income, whether it's we're making no money off of this podcast, so
Right.
this isn't part of that, but having assets that make money for you so that you don't really need to rely on your job. I do think it's also just a sense of general control over your situation. You
Mhm.
can't control many things, but you do have say over basic things like how much you spend on a given month, where you live, what you choose to drive, whether or not you carry debt, whether or not you save what you're making, whether or not you're allowing your lifestyle to keep up with your paycheck. You have control over those types of things. Once you take control of those things, then yeah, the stress levels come down. I think sometimes they can get replaced by other stresses like, when can I quit this job? Right.
Yeah. Yeah.
But that's kind of a good thing. That's the pursuit of a goal, a
Yeah.
long-term goal, right? Yeah.
Yeah. But it's so long term that sometimes you feel like there's no end in sight. At least I feel that way, right? I don't know about you.
It can feel long, that's for sure. That's why it's important to do the everything in between, right? Going to
Yes.
Dubai, going traveling, enjoying your life, but figuring out how to balance that with still achieving that independence over
Yeah.
the long term. Yeah.
You have spent the past few years understanding, getting yourself familiar with what does it mean to be financially independent, wealthy? What made you want to gain knowledge? What changed?
What changed?
Yeah.
What changed was I got to a point where I was making so much more from my job than I actually knew what to do with.
Hmm.
And that's going to sound like super privileged, and it is in a way. There's been a lot of work that's gone into it, but once you max your 401k and once you max your HSA and once you max these basic things, I just didn't have an idea of what to do in terms of other investments. I just didn't have the knowledge. For me, things like 401k, it was just happening in the background and it was just whatever. I tried using a financial advisor once. He was not helpful. So I went out and learned things on my own. And once I started to understand that investing is a very basic thing, essentially be diversified, don't throw it all into crypto or a single stock or whatever the case is. It's very basic. So once I learned that, I just went after it. That was basically it.
No, that's great. And how can one learn about all these
Oh, there's so much
things?
information. There's tons of books, there's tons of podcasts, there's a whole community of financial independence thinking type people out there in the world. For me, I just love learning about it. And I think that it's such a freeing thing once you finally get it and you understand that part of pursuing that also includes having a lot of fun on the way.
Yeah. And by the way, both of us don't come from wealth that has been
No,
handed down to
no.
us from previous generations. So I think it's remarkable that you're at a point where you said, okay, what do I do with this? That's remarkable, by the way, because not everybody can get to that point. I think it's important. I touched upon wealth. I feel like we interchangeably use being rich and being wealthy. And I had no idea what the difference was until a few years ago. So let's explore that topic. What do you think is the key difference between being rich and being wealthy is? And if there's a difference from your perspective?
Well, I think being rich is a reflection of what might be on the W 2 or whatever the 1099 or whatever it is at the end of the year. There's categories of average incomes and blah, blah. And now you're up here in the 1% and there you're rich. But that doesn't necessarily mean the same thing as being wealthy, which is on the other side of things, having investments and a net worth. So it's a big difference between your income and your net worth. Those
Right.
two different things. So wealth is tied to the net worth, which is what we all should be tracking and aware of and understanding what that means to our future. And then, of course, your income is how you get there. But I think income gets used to make you look rich.
That is a good point, right?
Looking rich doesn't usually mean you are.
Exactly. Yeah. If you max out your credit cards and you're in debt but you have the greatest and the latest of all of the apparel and the
Gadgets.
handbags and whatever you want to call it, just to give you that feeling that you're rich, that you can afford, doesn't mean that you are, first of all, and that you're not heading towards being wealthy, in my opinion. I think it's a sense of insecurity in my mind.
It can be. I think it depends on the percentage of the income that's being spent, right? Billionaires spending on
Oh yeah.
that's nothing.
No, the average person. Right? The average person. Yeah.
Yeah, but even the average person, in many cases, you can afford anything you want to. You just can't afford everything, right?
Right. It's all about choices.
Yeah.
I'm not saying don't buy what you want because you've earned it and you deserve it, but it's not a reflection of you being wealthy, right? It's just buy the jewelry that you want to give you that confidence, to make you feel happy, but you can't just go and buy everything and anything if you are not investing or if you're not saving for the future. Wealth to me is, how are you creating value in your assets, right? Like, it may sound cliche, but when you're sleeping, how is your money growing? And what's taking you towards that pathway to me is whatever your roadmap is to gain wealth. You may not be in the top 1%. Not everybody can be in the top 1%, but wealthy means having that financial independence that I mentioned, where you don't have to work 9 to 5, but you can do whatever you want in your time during the day, during the evening, whatever the case is, and still live your lifestyle and also invest in whatever you want, however you want to spend your time. That to me is wealthy. The definition could be different for one person to another. So
Yeah, I had heard of the concept of financial independence when I was pretty young, but the people who were throwing that term around, they were trying to lead a multi-level marketing business.
oh, okay. Okay.
And so when I think about it back in time, I'm like, these people had no clue actually. But then they would throw around that term. And so I think sometimes the term is confusing. What does that even mean? Okay, well, we're not coming into a lot of money. How do you actually get there? What I've learned over the last few years that is very cool is that anyone can do it. It's going to be harder with less in terms of a salary, depending on how much you're paying for a house or your car or whatever the case is. Those are just the biggest expenses. But anyone can do it. It's just a matter of making the math work. You got your income, you drive your expenses down, you figure out what part of that to have fun with, and then the rest of it you invest or figure out how to make it work for you. And the lower your expenses, the lower your financial independence number. Mm-hmm. Your financial independence number is basically 25 times your annual expenses. So once you hit that number, you're set. So like on a $40,000 a year expense, that's $1 million.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yes, that's the number. That's what you go for. And then depending on if you want to be more conservative, you can change the multiplier, but 25 is the general rule. And that gives you a 4% withdrawal rate, and then which gets adjusted with inflation over time.
25 times my annual expenses. Okay, I got to do that math myself.
Yeah, you should. It's interesting. And then it becomes a game after that. You're like, how much do I spend every month? And you look at that and you take an honest inventory of how much you spend. And then you kind of cut out all the extra stuff you probably wouldn't spend later. And then you calculate that. Mm-hmm. Yeah, times 25. Yeah.
I got to do that after this podcast.
Oh, I was going to say, and anybody's 401k account never tells you the right number because they don't take into account what you actually spend. They're basing that on your salary, which keeps changing over time. For you to actually know the number, you just do that math.
You touched upon diversification. I firmly believe in diversification. Now, don't invest everything in one stock, and you said crypto. How does someone know what to invest in? Because that comes across as a question time and time again. I mean, I know I have money invested in multiple avenues, but I still feel that's not enough and I want to diversify. So what do you think from your perspective? What can someone do to further diversify their portfolio?
Well, it depends on what they're doing. What's really popular and recommended and basic and easy and is proven to beat any financial advisor out there, or is just broad market index funds, meaning you think of S&P 500, that's the market. Yeah. And you can invest in that. Well, different companies like Vanguard and Fidelity and Charles Schwab and whoever, they all carry index funds that track the market like that. So it's not the exact one, but if you were to go online and compare performance over time, it's matching S&P. That's what I do. And then there are other ways that you can diversify if you want to add in like international. They have index funds that way so that it's still spread across multiple companies. They have small cap or growth funds. I would say do your homework, but for a tried and true solid performance, anything that tracks S&P. I do a combination of that. In 401k, I have bonds and stuff like that there. Gold is really hot right now because gold helps with turmoil in the market. And what we've got right now is turmoil. So everyone's buying gold and it's just totally skyrocketing. It's just simple Index funds, you're automatically diversified. The companies that are in it get assessed and removed or added depending on performance. So people call them self-cleansing. For that
Mm-hmm.
reason, there's an algorithm that goes through and looks at the performance, and then the better the performance, the higher the volume in that index, basically. So if you have an S&P 500 index, you've got Nvidia and you've
Yeah.
got Tesla and you've got all of that.
I think you touched upon it earlier in the podcast, using your HSA. I didn't know about investing your HSA until very recently, right? Like maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
No idea about it. So now I'm investing. It feels like we're just learning something new every year, and then you're like, "Oh, yeah, I should do this." And then you go after it. Is there any avenue where there's a checklist?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. For sure. They call it the investing order of operations.
Oh
They do.
wow, I had no
Yeah.
idea. You got to send it
Yeah.
to me, and maybe you could put
Yeah.
a link on the YouTube channel or something, because
Yeah, I think I would send people to people that talk about this as their job kind of thing. But,
hmm,
it just goes through lists like make sure you pay a high
yeah,
interest debt, get a tiny emergency fund, like $1,000, pay off
yeah,
debt. And then once you've done that, work on like a month of your salary, having that. So it's like emergency fund, getting the employer match, working your way up from there. Like there's a whole order of operations all the way up to regular brokerage accounts and then how to do that. I suggest if anybody's interested in actually learning it, go listen to Bigger Pockets Money. They're out of Colorado. They're very good at breaking
hmm.
down all of that information. You can find anything you want to know from them.
And whoever's listening to this podcast, Bigger Pockets Money.
Yeah.
That's helpful. And then anything in your past that shaped where you are or helped you get
Yeah.
to where you are? Like how did you and I just say, oh, we want to be financially independent? I don't know
It's
if
not
I
that
even
easy.
thought about like that. It's not like one of the days I'm just not able to sleep. How can I be financially independent? So what led us to that? I think it's just unconsciously that it happened, right? Or was it consciously for you? It just happened unconsciously for me.
It did not happen unconsciously for me. No.
Okay.
No, I had a rough childhood. We talked about that before. I didn't have a lot growing up. There was a point in time that my family and I were actually homeless, which is
Wow.
crazy. At the time you're going through it, it's kind of like this is weird, but you're just a kid, so I
Yeah.
wasn't that young. I was a teenager. So when I did finally move out 16 and then around 18, 19 started making money enough that I had more than what I needed to live on, I just started spending that like crazy to get whatever I wanted because I didn't have anything growing up. I was the oldest in the family and I still had hand-me-downs. So I just started shopping like crazy. I also had a lot of emotional challenges because of how I grew up, and there was just a point in my early 20s where I was kind of outrunning being around myself, to be honest. And so one of those ways was I discovered Nordstrom and I discovered makeup and I discovered everything. You name it. I was like, yeah, I created all kinds of trouble for myself. But then I didn't subscribe to the idea of being in debt. It's not that I didn't get to that point, but I didn't subscribe to it. I didn't like it. And so, for the most part, I absolutely refused that. I would not be in debt at all. I got to that very early because I had a taste of it. I didn't like it. But
Yeah.
beyond that, I personally didn't see a point on saving for the future. I honestly didn't think I was going to live that long, So,
Wow.
yeah, so that has a mental toll on whether or not you feel like saving is even worth it. It's kind of like, why? But
Hmm.
then at some point, you're looking around, you're like 30, and you're like, I guess I'm going to keep going because now I'm past where I thought this end was going to happen. And I just started from there and was like, okay, let me figure this out. I still had an internal battle about whether or not it was worth it because it feels initially like you have to decide between having fun now or this weird distant, far off thing, but really it's not. They work together, but the way I thought of it was not like that. I thought, what's the point? For a
Hmm.
long time, I actually lived longer than I thought I was going to. And I realized, maybe I should do
Interesting.
something. Yeah. Which is kind of
Interesting.
sad, but it's true.
Yeah, it's sad. And I had no idea. I don't think we ever discussed that.
No, it's,
Ever.
yeah.
Wow.
But I understand why people, especially people that come from like violent areas or areas where they've lost people or something
Mm,
like this, I can understand why they might have a block for being able to save and even understand that there's a future possible. And it doesn't
yeah.
help that we hear all kinds of bad stories all the time either, because that's constantly, I think, putting ideas in people's heads that shouldn't be there. What about you?
I'm also the older daughter. I was very much pampered and privileged, I would say. So growing up, you and I have talked about the fact before that I would just spend like crazy. I didn't care. Not that my family was wealthy, it's just my thinking was, I'll always work. There's so much more time left to save.
Mm-hmm.
So why worry about it right now? Just enjoy it. Not that I wouldn't save, it's just I would spend a lot more. I would buy stuff that I didn't need. I've donated a lot. I've actually realized the importance of money. And you and I were just talking about it. I think since geopolitical situation has started changing in the past few years, I've realized the importance of having financial security because you
Mm-hmm.
just never know what the future holds. And before that, I knew I would think about it, but not into that much detail. Now I am more scared than anything just because of what's going around me. I am more cognizant of where I spend the money. I'll give you an example. Each one of us could buy a very expensive designer bag. Let's just use an example, right? We can. And 3 years ago or 4 years ago, I would think about it a few times, but I would go and buy it. Now I don't want to buy that most expensive bag. I buy nice things. That's not what I'm saying. But let's say if it would have costed X amount of money, I'm like, no, I don't think it's worth it because I could use that for something else. I'm afraid of being at a point, I don't know where that fear comes from. I'm afraid of being at a point where I cannot withdraw money from the bank and I have no money left. Like, how am I going to survive without money for food, for basic necessity? And so that's the fear that for whatever reason I have. And that's why I'm just so mindful. Like, I've never balanced a budget before. I never. Now I'm like, okay, where is this money going? Something has changed, which has triggered this insecurity. And so I'm now more careful. I'm not saying I don't spend money, but I'm just very, very mindful of where I
Mm-hmm.
spend it. And I would rather do something good with it than
Yeah.
buy something extremely expensive. That's where my head is. Doesn't mean it's right or wrong. That's just how I am today.
Yeah. Women view money as security anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I don't know. I understand men don't. Men look at it more like, hey, I'm winning, or something like this. But women, we're just like, no, we need to know what's happening because it's a direct impact on safety and the feeling of
Yeah.
safety.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not sure what has changed. Maybe I've matured, maybe I've grown up, who knows, but that's where I am. I think 15 times if there's a large purchase.
Well, that's good. That's being intentional.
Yeah, that's true.
That's what all people should do is be intentional.
Yeah.
Figure out those good specific things that you want or need and then do that. It actually makes me feel happier about what I do spend money on. My hot button now, I just love going out and hanging out with my husband and traveling with him. Those things are awesome. And then every now and then I have to buy clothes and I'm like, man.
You're valuing creation of memories comparison to just things that you buy that make you happy for some amount of time. And doesn't mean that you don't buy those. It's just that now your priority is creating those memories.
Yep. Yeah, so if you get your financial house in order, as they say, you take that control back as best you can by really bringing yourself into a place where you are well balanced, you know what you're intentionally spending on, you're essentially in financial control, even if you're not financially independent yet, you know you're on the way, you have your plan. There's no bad thing about that. It's going to make you feel good, really improve your quality of life.
Very important topic we talked about a lot. But what resonated with me is don't think of just having a short-term strategy, have a long-term strategy, and keep reflecting upon that strategy, because I think as you age, your priorities change, your spending habits change. It's a long-term plan, and sometimes you come across days or a time period where, like you said, why are we saving, and what are we saving for? And it's important to also understand that it will help lower the stress. It won't make it stress free, but the more you save, the more you gain financial independence. I think it'll set you up for success. Who knows? Maybe you're creating wealth for your family that you're going to pass it down to. Who knows? Maybe you're creating generational wealth. Whatever you think generational wealth means, I think that's important than being rich. Rich is short term. Think about wealth long term, and continue to reevaluate your plan. Try different options, take different risks. Sometimes unforeseen circumstances happen. You pause, but then you come back towards your financial plan, whatever that is, and then work towards it. So hopefully this is helpful. And then if you have any other ideas that you want us to talk about, we could talk about financial independence forever. But if there's any other topics that are of interest to you, do feel free to comment, and then we'll certainly address it. Thank you so much, and talk to you all soon.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye.